Okay, so good morning, Rosie Duffield, the candidate for the Labour Party in Canterbury. Thank you for agreeing to come on the podcast, this special one. I know everyone's very busy at the moment, so I really appreciate your time. As people will see, you're video calling in. First of all, tell us a little bit about what your schedule is looking like at the moment, how hectic things are, and what's going on for you in the campaign right now.
It's as hectic as it always gets in the last couple of weeks, and that's my favourite bit. Journalists always call this the boring bit, as we kind of get the descent down to the big day itself. But I really enjoy it because you're just running around like crazy. There's never a dull moment. It's organising canvassing sessions and leaflets and checking things and driving around to deliver posters. When they've all finally arrived, we've still got loads coming. And it's just doing lots of sort of normal kind of meetings, the kind of meetings that I have, and interspersed with campaigning. And I love that. I love being busy, and I hate being bored, so it suits me.
Where are you? Where are you calling in from today?
I'm at Campaign HQ, actually, in the middle of Canterbury.
Okay, great. Obviously, it's a little bit of a different, experience for you compared to some, for the other candidates. You're the incumbent MP. Conversations like this, that they can talk about lots of things that they wish that they would do. And, you're able to talk about things that you have done as well as that you'd wish you'd be able to do. So, it's a slightly different take on it. So, and also Canterbury residents, they already know you fairly well. At this point, I usually ask, I've asked other candidates to tell me a little bit about their upbringing, about, where they were born and bred, so to speak. So just catch us up on that a little bit, Rosie. What's your background?
Okay, well, I wasn't born in Canterbury, but I moved here in 1998, which was exactly half my life this February. So I've been here 26 years. It's the longest I've ever been anywhere because I grew up in various different bits of London. So this is definitely home.
Great. And at this stage as well, obviously, I've asked other candidates about their core values. Obviously, people will know you very well as their MP for how long now?
7 years.
7 years. So I think most constituents will know that your core values are very aligned with the Labour Party. You've been a Labour Party member for a long time, I think.
Yeah. I think those are the things that we sort of have in common is, good public services, good sense of service to our community. I work really hard because I have got the best job in the world. I'm not brilliant at switching off. Perhaps probably I get told off a lot about that, but when you've got a job like this, you never know how long it's going to last. You want to do as much as you can in as short a time as possible. And there's so much to fix. You've been sort of dabbled in local politics, but, we really have suffered since Brexit in this part of Canterbury, in this part of East Kent. And there's just so much to mitigate from that. We're seeing the decline of certain businesses. We were so used to tourism here. Whenever I go into the high street now, I'm hearing so much less in terms of, the accents that we heard, the school parties. And yeah, we used to sort of joke about them and moan about them, but we love them really. And we need them to be here and to make all of our businesses based on that work. So there's so much to kind of do here all the time. And I think I did an interview the other day where someone said to me, wow, there's so many national issues that impact on Canterbury differently to other parts of the country. And that's really been my core mission, to fight those things and to get that across for the last 7 years. So when you see the cuts to the health service and the waiting lists increasing, we've got so many problems with our particular health trust, but to do with location, to do with recruitment, to do with Brexit. Brexit is a thread that weaves its way through our lives here. And so I'm not going to sort of give that up or stop going on about it, because every single day I could link something I deal with in Canterbury to that, just because of our geography. So I think that Canterbury is unique. Whitstable has a whole set of different issues, again, largely linked with Brexit. And so I feel like my mission in a way for the last 7 years is, yes, to stick to the Labour core values, but also to reach out to that coalition of voters that we know we need here to get Labour over the line. And there are so many people who support other parties, but we've got a lot of other things in common, like a hatred of Brexit, a love of our university, a love of our city, and all of these things unite us.
You mentioned Brexit. I'm going to get it out of the way early. In some of these podcasts, it's come up halfway through, sometimes towards the end. It's still something very relevant in Canterbury residents group. Some people question whether or not it's still relevant to today's politics. It was a decision made a long time ago. Is it time to move on, or should we be thinking even more about the effects of Brexit on a place like Canterbury?
I've noticed that rather than just being able to sort of park it and move on, the effects that it's had have changed, but they're still there and they're still affecting us all the time, but they are different. So we have the first wave of effects, if you like, second, third. There are things I'm dealing with, like, so you can talk about initially immediate effects on the agricultural departments. I'm talking rubbish now.
I'm sure there are some people in a department that are in charge of it,
documents this way. But so the agricultural industry here and fishers were affected immediately. The language schools, our B&Bs, all of the industries, colleges, the people that, the university obviously is the obvious one, but they were initially affected straight away. And then there's been ripples and ripples and ripples and ripples. So businesses that thought they could still keep going, that the new kind of different tourists that were here would keep them going, they've then tried to keep going. And then actually what people want when they're visiting the city has changed because they're slightly different, looking for something different. It never ends for us.
You've always...
People mention it to me all the time.
You've always been a Remainer. You've always been very clear on that point. Are you a rejoiner?
There was a giant march. I think it was this March, actually. Time is going so weird during the election. It's either this March or last March. I went to a really big rally through London, and it was the same people that I'd been with and recognised, and a couple of our MEPs were leading the march, and I just thought, I don't feel any different. Everything's the same. I want us to get there eventually, to rejoin. And I know there's no political appetite for that at the moment, more widely. But I still feel like most of the people I talk to here want to rejoin eventually. And I think the only way to kind of get there is just to keep in with those people and to see what's happening. And although at the moment it might be this Christmas wish, we want to join again, we do need to have those conversations. And I know there'll be people who voted leave who think, no, that's done and dusted, it's over. But because of the specific problems in Canterbury, things like, the oysters being exported to restaurants in France, that's really niche and really specific to our area. And the fishing licences and all of those kinds of things that I have to work on every single day, I can't just let it go. I can't go, that's fine, that was in the past. It isn't in the past, it's something we live with all the time. So I will keep an eye on all of those rejoining campaigns and just see where we're going. And the good thing for me is in the last couple of weeks, Keir Starmer's been saying we want as close a relationship as possible. We want to work on that, possibly even, the single market, I don't know. So I'm just going to keep looking at where that's going and not take my eye off that because it is so important to us.
Okay, so that's Brexit. We're gonna move on to sort of some Canterbury issues in a moment. One thing I've been asking candidates is something which I can't ask you, but I can ask you a variation on the question, because I've been saying to people, what will the effect be on your life of becoming MP? You've obviously got experience of this. So what has been the effect on your life becoming MP? Obviously, we've seen a lot going on at the moment around safety and security and feeling safe and feeling secure. So I think it's fair to say that it's had a big impact on you.
Yeah. I mean, nobody who asked me that question in 2017 would have got a serious answer because, as you know, it was deemed to be impossible that I could win. So I didn't mentally rehearse what it'd be like. I didn't tell my family it was a possibility. I didn't sort of put things in place like actually most people have a flat in London. I didn't know any of that stuff. And So it was this giant catastrophic life change. And I think people perhaps aren't prepared enough for that. It was brilliant for me. I mean, I personally went from earning about £12,000 as a teaching assistant to quadrupling, my salary went up to, I think it was about 70 something when I became an MP. And that's money I could never have imagined for me and my children. I didn't know what on earth that'd be like. So that really helped me out personally. Obviously, I stopped having to get tax credits. But it's things like being recognised. You can't really, I'm not going to moan about that, but you can't really prepare for that if you don't know what that's like. And you're just going about your daily business, like working on an iPad on the train, and people will just chat to you as though they know you. And mostly that is really nice, actually. We don't talk about the good things about that, but mostly it's really nice. But then there are some sinister aspects as well that you have to take care of your security. We always have to carry sort of an emergency alarm. Now we've got to the stage where women MPs in particular have to. I mean, the police always know my weekend schedule when I'm working in Canterbury. So they know what areas I'm going to, what visits I'm going to. They patrol quite near my office, things like that. So that's not a great effect, but I'm dealing with
that. Must feel quite unsettling, and you must feel sad, for example, that you've had to pull out of a hustings event, because I know that you have always taken part in these in the past. It's come as quite a shock to people that the incumbent MP has not felt safe, felt able to attend a hustings. I mean, obviously, I know you can't go into details around security issues, but is it essentially there is people advising you, or you feel there's a threat to your physical safety coming to an event like that in Canterbury?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of different things, and I was really excited about. I mean, we get requests for hustings almost straight away in Canterbury. Other areas don't deal with any hustings at all. So many of my MP friends just don't do them, especially if they're considered to be in a safe seat. But I have a really different attitude. I think it's absolutely part of democracy. We're in a university town. We've got places where debate happens. We're used to that here. And I think it's really important to Canterbury. We've got Canterbury Society and lots of residents groups and CRG and all of these places where we debate politics. And I really enjoy that. If I didn't enjoy that, I wouldn't be a politician. So the kind of accusation of me being frightened, I just thought, what a weird take that was when somebody accused me being frightened.
Yeah, so this was a Labour peer that described you as Fritz. I had to Google it. I'd never heard the word Fritz before. Or lazy. That must have stung. I mean,
it was a bit unkind. Yeah, I'd rather he said. I mean, I know this particular guy disagrees with me on everything, but I'm not frightened or lazy. I was just. One of the aspects is you don't just have to think about your own self or your own safety, but in a situation where this particular first hosting, they'd organised security, but I couldn't sort of say to them, well, this person's not allowed in and this person's not allowed in. That would have been completely wrong. But I knew from previous hostings I'd done where the former MP was the particular target of one person. I knew how unpleasant those things could get. And when I won in 2017, I felt I was constantly apologising to the previous MP because he was turning up and there was this particular person just yelling stuff at him. It was really awkward. It did make, these hustings are not professional events. They're people in our community putting them on because they're nice people. So we had one in Whitstable where the local church was putting it on, and they're not equipped to deal with that sort of stuff necessarily.
I guess
fair than the other candidates.
Well, yeah, politics needs to be civil. It needs to be accessible, and I think all of these things, they stop both of those happening. I think. What do you say to people who say it's a part of the job? Politics is I regularly hear politicians describe their industry as nasty business. It's cutthroat. that might not be what anybody wants, but it is what we've got. And when you enter the system, some people say you are entering a known world. What do you say to those people?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it is not a nice business to be in. I mean, I love my job. The bulk of my job is helping Canterbury constituents. So in the last 7 years, we've done I think it's about 62,000 pieces of casework. Now, that isn't that I've helped 62,000 individuals, but they're bits of work we've done for the community and the individuals. That means I've had a reach of almost half of the old constituency, which is now shrunk down to quite considerably less numbers. But that's a lot of work, and I love that part of it. But you don't go on television and talk about getting Mr. Smith a new ramp for his house or a wet room or somebody out of their crowded house. What you talk about is the national stuff or these headlines. So the vast majority of my work is brilliant and lovely and not confrontational, but the stuff that everyone sees is the kind of bear pit of the chamber, of the House of Commons, the Lords to a lesser extent, and they see the sort of vitriol online. But I don't see why we should just accept that it is that. I wouldn't have a political conversation with someone who works in Sainsbury's or who's driving me in a taxi or something that was horrible and volatile and spiteful and abusive. So actually, why do we just do that online? And it's more like that online than it is in real life. So in real life, yes, you've got Tory opponents in my case, or Lib Dems or the SNP. We get on absolutely fine and in a really civil way when we're at work. I can be in the queue for a cup of tea with anyone from any party, and we talk about our children and our lives, and we park the adversarial politics bit. So we don't have to be like that.
I mean, you're I'd say fairly well known, I think, for cross-party cooperation. You've spoke out on various issues, across party lines with people. Do you see yourself as quite a sort of collaborative worker in sense that you will work with other parties? Do you draw a line? Where do you draw the line in terms of would you work with parties like that are more on the extreme edges of the spectrum?
That's a good question. I really like collaborative work because it gets things done. So if you're working with someone whose party is in government, that's really useful to make actual changes. But also, you might be working with the smaller parties. For example, Caroline Lucas, the only Green member, often did amendments to our bigger sort of votes and stuff. And almost every time I either put my name to her amendments or voted for them because she was really good on green policy. And what that serves, and this might take us into, I don't like first past the post, but what that does is she's representing an awful lot of people who are interested in those issues but aren't in that chamber. And it also makes other parties lean more towards, I think, better environmental policies. So you can do that kind of thing. But yeah, in terms of working with extreme parties, I probably really struggle to work with anyone from the right-wing parties like Reform or UKIP. I can't imagine having anything in common much with them. But like Joe Cox said, you have to strive to find what you've got in common with people. I mean, George Galloway, that would be tricky for me. He's been really vile to and about lots of groups, and I can't really abide that.
I guess it's an interesting question as well, because obviously the electoral landscape at the moment is very interesting. We're not sure quite what this government's going to look like. I think there's possibilities of coalitions. There's certainly more possibility than there has been in the past. And so it's interesting to get a feel for sort of how you would approach situations like coalitions. I want to come on now to a real Canterbury issue. One of the most regularly raised topics is the A&E or lack of in Canterbury. We have an urgent treatment centre, but people are also talking about things like stroke care and the distance across Kent you have to travel for medical services. What are your views and your party's views on healthcare such as A&Es in cities like Canterbury?
It's the thing that probably frustrates me the most. I mean, don't forget, when you live in Canterbury and your family use the NHS, and also my staff, you're invested in it in a personal way as well as, in a professional way. And it affects my family quite a bit. And I feel like I'm just always, as an office, we work very closely with Eckhoft, and we work very closely with the PALS group. So when we have complaints in where people have had, hours and hours on a trolley or something's gone wrong, we will immediately sort of open a case with the PALS service, the kind of complaint service, if you like. And I have to say, in the years I've been doing this, and with the new CEO, relatively new, couple of years, Tracy Fletcher of the Trust, we have seen as a team things improve dramatically. And I wouldn't be giving her due if I didn't say that. We didn't have a very constructive relationship with the last CEO. We found her difficult to get hold of, and she didn't necessarily answer our constituents' questions to the full. But Tracy Fletcher, who I do regularly meet with, is so much more proactive, and I am feeling more hopeful about our local trust and our local NHS offer than I have since I took the job. It might not be immediately obvious to everyone that things are improving, but on a non-existent budget, what they've managed to do. I was recently in Harvey looking at the new sort of the way that they triage A&E. It has improved so much. They've done that on absolutely no money. Now, the danger of them doing it on no money and improving so much is people go, oh, they don't need more money. Yes, we do. And I will continue to beg for that money from whoever's in government. And I've worked with other Kent MPs, and they're all Tory, but we all want the same thing. We all want more money for this area. I remember the day that the A&E shut, and it was 2017, and it was like a sort of body blow, because I thought, what on earth are we going to do? And then from then on, I got a steady stream of letters and emails. They've stopped as much as they were, but it was saying, I had to be in an ambulance in absolute pain, on morphine, going over all the bumps on the road to William Harvey. QEQM, I was there on a trolley for 20 hours. You get those heartbreaking, horrendous stories. So believe me, I want that to stop.
Yeah.
Speaking to a young person when I did a Q&A at sixth form about 2 days ago, who has regular trips to A&E, he's got ongoing health conditions, and he said, I have to, in the middle of the night, somehow just get myself to Ashford. That's heartbreaking. But I don't want that for anyone. However, I'm not going to pretend that there is an offer on the table that we're about to get an A&E. I used to think we were going to. I used to believe all of those consultations were going to end in a lovely shining new hospital. That's not even in the pipeline at the moment. And I saw a clip recently from the 2019 election where Matt Hancock, who was a few health secretaries ago, stood outside of the candidate and said, we're going to get a lovely new hospital here in Canterbury. And I thought, really? I didn't know that was an offer. Sure enough, nothing has changed and nothing's happened. But I'm glad that Wes Streeting, my friend and colleague, is potentially going to be our health secretary. I've got a good working relationship with him. I want to first of all bring him down here and show him that we've got a building in Canterbury that predates the NHS. 1937 it was built, and it is falling apart. And we've got, if you were a member of the NHS staff, what would you feel like going into work every day and there's a drip in a different corner in the building? Or, I went to a part of the hospital the other day where the ramp for wheelchairs to go up has rotted through, and there's no money to replace it. So I'm afraid money is largely still the answer. There's also a change of culture that needs to happen, a change in the way we recruit staff and retain them, just making them feel valued. There's so much. So
there's obviously, one, like you say, one answer is budget, is money. One way that the Labour Party have proposed to raise funds is by taxing private schools, or taxing the fees on private schools with VAT at 20%. We have King's School in Canterbury. We have lots of private schools, all different ages, dotted all around the city and all throughout the constituency. Are you worried about the impact of that tax if Labour win on the people in your constituency who will have to take children out, but also the impact it has on schools who then have to find spaces in mainstream education for those. Is this
questions? And people have raised them with me. I remember in the 2019 election, we had some people that we work with regularly, and by the way, every Friday, and that's 7 years of every Fridays, and sometimes during recess I have advice surgeries on different days, so we're talking at least every Friday, and then at those surgeries, there isn't a single surgery that I do where I might have 5 people in, 10 people in, where somebody isn't there to talk about SEN. That never, I don't think I've had a single solitary week since I took over where somebody isn't, might be the same person coming back, they're desperate, but that's one of my biggest caseloads. So it's something that my team know really well. There are 2,700 roughly children in private schools in Canterbury. That's probably quite high. And those people that work at least one job, maybe 2 jobs, do all the overtime they can possibly do to send their SEN children to private school, they're going to be really frightened about this. In 2019, some of those parents were in tears. But I think, as I understand it, and again, Canterbury's on its own in a way. I'm, representing Labour and Canterbury. I do sometimes, clash with Labour policy because of things like Brexit, because of things like this. So I'm going to make sure that Bridget Phillipson, if she does become Education Secretary, understands that in this area we do have a different way of doing things. We've got the grammar system still in the 11 plus. It's just not as straightforward as it might be for other areas. But I also recognise, and I've been talking to some private school pupils actually, some girls from King's the other day, and they were really understanding of this policy. They understand that they have advantages that some of the children at the poorest schools don't get, and that there has to be a way of levelling up education. So I think that's a really important thing to be saying. But also Labour have said that people on EHCP plans, and that's a very small percentage, that whole system is completely broken and not working for most people. But those children will be exempt from the tax. I mean, I think it's just an idea at this stage. When you have an idea, you've got to work through the practicalities of that idea, and I'll be hopefully. And
you're prepared to do that and to represent. Would you consider yourself an environmentalist?
Oh my gosh, yes, of course.
I mean, we've got beautiful rivers in Canterbury. I think one thing that we see a lot across social media on the Facebook groups is hordes of volunteers every weekend putting on waders, trawling through rivers, doing litter picks. I think that whilst it's both something to be celebrated as because of the community and the fact that people are willing to do that, it's also is it their job? Should volunteers be having to look after our wildlife and our waterways like this, or is this something that you would like to see the next government plough more into?
That's a really good question, because I've often thought that myself. We've got people, often not spring chickens, I have to say, going out sort of cutting verges or cleaning litter from where people throw things out of the window in their cars insanely on the A roads. And I always think, oh my God, that's not actually very safe. I don't really want you walking around, that dual carriageway picking up litter, but they're pride in their community. It's really important. But yeah, we really need funding for the EA, the Environment Agency, whose funding has been slashed over the last few years, so that when I've got farmers saying to me, this is the damage on the Stour being done by the beaver dams, the EA, they send along, probably very brilliant people who are very nice, but often quite young. They'll have a van and they'll have essentially a jam jar. And they can't fund what we really need here. So that the EA needs more teeth and more money and more personnel. That's a given, because the farmers and landowners here are having to do an awful lot of that work themselves. And as you say, people in their waders, there are beach cleaning groups in your Whitstable and along the coast there that have to sort of go out all the time. And, we've had a problem, especially during lockdown, with the little gas canisters that were littering the beach.
Oh, the nitrous oxide.
Yeah, nitrous oxide. And they spend ages just cleaning and collecting those. Not even, I hope that's safe for them to do it. It seems to be. But yeah, it would be really nice to get more money for public services like that. And we've taken in our litter collection sort of into the council's control. And it's early days. But I think
so you'd have environmental causes fairly high on your priority list, would you say?
Yeah, I want us to see the go on the London.
So let's talk a bit about some national issues. Other candidates I've been asking what would be the very first issue they raised in Parliament if they won. You've raised you've done the job for a while. You've raised lots of issues. Long time ago since you raised your first issue. If you won this election and you were returned to Parliament, I guess, is there anything you'd like to pick up on? What issue would you talk about? What do you think is your most pressing issue to be used in your maiden speech of the next government if you want?
I don't think I get to make another maiden speech. I think it's literally just
no. But I guess you will at some point make a first speech. I guess so. I
think it's sort of what's important to Canterbury, but also the national things. So I think education. I mean, our schools are doing really well, but on a very, very shoestring budget. And I've had over the last few years, I've had head teachers crying because they cannot do what they came into education to do. So that's broken. The fact that we've got, I mean, in this, not just in this city, but we've got public sector workers. We all know that nurses, police officers, social workers, teachers are using food banks. There are food banks set up in workplaces. So there's a food bank at Kent and Canterbury and all of the hospitals for staff to use. And that just makes me really raging angry. Why should we slip the word food bank into everyday use as though it's normal? I don't want it to be normal. We have this sort of superstition whenever I visit Liam and the team at our biggest food bank in Canterbury, and in fact the one in Baptist Church. We always say, don't want to see you again, don't want to see you soon, because we sort of hope that those things will not be needed. So I think that is a really cute, I mean, we could umbrella that under cost of living. I think young people's mental health is one of the biggest crises that we've got at the moment. We're promised to put a mental health practitioner in every school, because at the moment, when I speak to head teachers, they are unable to afford those services. And that breaks their hearts, because they know what young people are still recovering from lockdown. I know families where the sort of young teenager has never gone back to school after lockdown, because if they had some mental health issues, they could just, completely go, and they were unable to get back on that footing. And that's heartbreaking. There's so much.
Yeah, I guess. So when we last did an interview like this for the last general election, a huge amount has changed. One thing that's changed is what I think a lot of people think of when they think of what Rosie Duffield, pressing issues. What concerns you a lot? I did a Google search on your name, and obviously the story, the issue around single sex spaces, around transgender issues. There was a small protest at your event launch. This is all very different, to previous time. We never, none of these sort of issues were something that we had to talk about. So a lot's changed. Do you think that is because of the national picture changing, or because of your own views and perspectives changing? Because, I think that one of them has changed.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably both, actually. I think it's something we're talking about an awful lot more that we didn't when I first stood as MP, or when I stood again. In 2019, I did hear this on the doorstep. I remember when Keir was first elected, and he was sort of asking me about my experience in the 2019 election. And that was a hard election. It was, we weren't popular as a party nationally. It was very, very hard work, sort of persuading people that Labour were a safe pair of hands. And yeah, things that came up on the doorstep there were our sort of woeful offer about Brexit, if you like. People here were really hurting on that. Obviously, we had Jeremy Corbyn not being especially popular, and yeah, but I did also hear women saying to me, 3 women, but considering that the only things that were raised on doorstep were Brexit and Jeremy Corbyn, that was unusual. I didn't hear any other subject raised, and they said to me that they were concerned about what was happening in schools, with more and more children feeling that they were struggling with their identity. And I remember thinking, I've got to go and find out more about that. And I did. And I kept in touch with a couple of those people. And I thought, okay, this is really an interesting issue. I found out as much as I possibly could. And then it just sort of mushroomed nationally into an issue that people were just talking about all the time. And what we've got to remember is this is a tiny percentage of the population who most of the time want to go about their daily lives in peace. You know, it's something like 0.01% of the population. And, you know, anyone struggling with their identity or what we call gender dysphoria needs support and sympathy and respect. And I think that's the baseline for me.
I think
that when it crosses with women's rights, that's an entirely different thing because I am a feminist, you know.
And I think your views on the topic are very, very well known, and you're very clear about them. There seems to be almost, I guess, three camps in terms of the reaction on social media to it in Canterbury Residents Group. There's those that agree with your stance. There's those that firmly disagree with your stance. And then there are some people who, to them, it's not a big priority. Like you say, it represents a very small, the transgender people represent a very small percentage of the population. And those people, I think some of those people in the middle feel that the focus nationally is wrong, and that the focus on these issues is far too strong, and that your focus as well is too strong on them. Do you think that's fair, or and if you do think that you have a very big focus on it, do you think that's coming from you personally or from the national picture?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. You've obviously looked into this a lot, but I think the truth is, like I said, I mean, the majority of my work, so, 12 hours of the day will be focused on local issues and casework. And I'll be doing that when I'm in Parliament as well, because I'm talking to my team all the time. But you don't see headlines about Mr. Smith's wet room. You don't see headlines about, somebody's visa application. You don't see headlines about their PIP assessments or all of those things that we do on a daily basis. You don't see... And what, those are all private and confidential things the majority of my constituents come and see me about. That's the bulk of my work, 99.9% of my work. The rest in Parliament is big national issues like women's health and, voting on various things, and my work as a member of the select committee called EFRA, which is the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Committee. So that's what I do on a daily basis. But what the media talk about me doing is transgender issues and women's rights. It represents such a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of my work. It's probably more prevalent in my personal and social life, actually, because the people that I mix with as friends are also well known for talking about these issues. But in terms of my focus, it takes up so little bandwidth of my life and my work that it is misrepresented and blown up because it is a controversial issue for journalists to ask me about all the time. They're not going to say to me, how many people are on benefits in Canterbury, and when did you last go to the job centre? Or, Rosie, we'd really like a story about how many visa applications you successfully applied for on behalf of your constituents. No one's interested in those. They want the sexy, headlines, and they want to have attention. I think that's why it gets covered so much.
I think that makes a lot of sense, and that's the response to those in the middle. What would your response be to those who firmly disagree? You're clearly on, pole opposite sides of a spectrum, really, in terms of where you are. There's a large group of people on Canterbury Residents Group. I think and we saw we've seen on social media, and they I think a lot of them were shocked to see these views because, like we said, it didn't come out before, and I think you explained why that was. Things developed slowly. But what would you say to them if you were trying to reach out to them?
I'd love to have conversations in person with anyone that wants to come and see me and advise surgery and talk to me about those things. But the reality is, like I said, it's such a small group of people, but there's probably a slightly larger group of people who've kind of caught the fire on social media and think it's bigger than it is, and also don't really understand my views. But there are groups called things like Canterbury with the T. Now, they are a tiny, tiny group of people that are in Canterbury, and I know them all. And I know why they started that group, and I know why they're escalating those views. So some of those people in those tiny groups, a lot of the followers or the commenters on that group on Twitter are not anywhere near Kent. Some of them are abroad, some are in the north or whatever. But those people have other grudges against me largely as well. That's where it stemmed from. But there are,
and I think there are some legitimate people for sure in Canterbury, and
I need to explain that. Yeah. So my first maiden speech, my first speech when I got elected in 2017 was at Pride. It was one of the best days of my life.
I introduced you on the stage.
You did. It was exciting. It meant so much to me emotionally because we had an MP who campaigned against equal marriage. I mean, not just didn't want to vote for equal marriage, but actually actively campaigned to stop equal marriage, which is just such an alien concept to most people now.
I mean, you mentioned Pride there. I mean, it's been a wild ride because, like you say, from maiden speech, if you like, in the city maiden speech being on the stage at Pride Canterbury, to you now saying that you would feel unsafe going to Pride. Do you, the majority of the LGBTQ community in Canterbury, the people who attend Pride, would be quite shocked. I think they're quite shocked here. You feel you can't come, but they understand why. But they would like to know if that doesn't inform your view somewhat, that the fact that you feel unsafe attending the city's Pride event. Do you feel like you've lost the LGBT community in Canterbury?
No, not at all. I mean, I've got so many friends. When I first started going to Pride, when I was young, it was called Gay Pride, and it wasn't necessarily a safe place to be. We didn't have it in Canterbury when I was growing up, and I didn't grow up actually in Canterbury, as you know. But you revived Pride. I'm really proud of the fact that a lot of people come to Pride from outside of Kent. It's a well-known, good event. But I don't want to go there if people feel that I'm hostile to them. It's not my event. I'm a straight person. And out of respect, and also I don't want to start some great big riot, I don't feel that I should go to Pride anymore because of the way I'm perceived, which is sad. I go to other Prides. The last one I went to was Amsterdam. That was absolutely brilliant and fun. And it's really over the top and it takes over the entire city. So that's really great. But in a serious way, very many of my gay friends, particularly my age, there has been an age divide here, don't feel safe at Pride either. And that tells you that it has changed hugely. There's so many points of view, not just, I'm a street person, but within the gay community about Pride. It's become a really difficult issue. I don't feel comfortable commenting on those things because I'm straight, but at the same time, I understand why some of my gay friends don't feel that they are welcome either and that they can relate to it. But it's got to be sorted out at some point because ultimately we all want everyone to feel respected and safe.
So you'd like to one day go back to Pride Canterbury?
Absolutely, of course I would.
And if you were elected again, you would try to work towards that. That would be something that you'd like to eventually achieve.
I'd really like to do that. Yeah, of course I would. But I think also people are changing. This has been such a contentious issue. But I think people are understanding and changing their views, and it's been a conversation, hasn't it? And I think I hope we've got past the worst of it. It might not feel like it at the moment, and social media doesn't reflect my life experience of it outside of
No, it's a toxic debate. I don't think anybody sensible disagrees with that statement. I think that and the way I see it is that when you're dealing with something toxic, you need to tread carefully. You need to be very careful, very sensitive, and I think that all sides of the debate need to bear that in mind. But there are some, that are very vulnerable people in this debate, and they need to be thought of. I'd like to talk about the police in Canterbury. It's another really big issue that comes up regularly in Canterbury residents group. People frequently and sadly complaining about the response that they have had from the police when they've called them, or complaining that there's a general, uptick in antisocial behaviour, in things that put people off visiting the city centre, put people off visiting Whitstable on a day out. They affect people in rural communities through theft and antisocial behaviour. Yeah. The police, the Labour argue they have been underfunded for a long time. Is the amount of money that Labour are promising to put into the police going to be enough? Because as far as the residents on the group see it, there needs to be a big amount of funding going into the police to fix things.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many issues there. I regularly meet with our senior police officers here, probably at least once a month, and they keep me up to date with what's going on. We're really lucky in Canterbury. We've got a chief inspector who is absolutely invested. I think the first time I met him when he was relatively new here, the first thing he said, he laid out this neighbourhood policing plan, and it was so good. And I thought, he gets it. He understands that Dane John is a hotspot, that the nighttime economy is a hotspot. He got all of the things that I said I get emails about. And we're very often, since I was elected, I have these conversations with the police about the difference between the perception of crime and the reality of crime. And I'm always putting the view of the residents and the constituents, and they're always saying, but look at the statistics, it's not as bad as people feel. So I think somewhere in between is probably where we usually land. But if you can't see the police around where you are not going to feel safe. If you know that there are those hotspots you don't want to walk through when you're on your own, or like you're not going to feel safe. If you're a student coming to the city, you need to know that you, particularly young women actually, you need to know that you can walk about. You can maybe have one or two drinks extra on a fun night out without having to also keep at the back of your mind that you might be prey to the wrong kind of people. I mean, all of that is really important. And I think over the last few years, we've seen an escalation in my office on emails about open drug dealing on the streets and things. I mean, things that I wouldn't believe were possible in Canterbury. Now, I am bound to say there are not enough police officers. You mentioned Whitstable. We had to fight with petition after petition after petition to get one police officer at Whitstable. The police station was shut down a really long time ago, and we have now one police officer, Andy, for the entire area. That is insane. So what the police here end up doing, or big party nights in the summer, festivals and things, they send their police from Canterbury over there, and they've only got 6 or 7 in the middle of Canterbury to start with. So it really is a question of resourcing. Matthew Scott, our Police and Crime Commissioner, is kind of in charge of the budget. But, to give him his due, although he's a Tory, I think he tries very hard. He's got a police background. I've always given him credit for doing as much as he can with a tiny pot of money, So again, we need money from the top down. We need more police on the streets. It's as simple as that. I think we've said we'll fund 13,000 additional police officers and PCSOs. I think we need more, but you can understand why the Labour Party are not promising bells, whistles, all of the money, because the simple truth is the country doesn't have the money to fund as many police officers as we need right now. But it's a good start, and we need to train them up. It takes a while to train them up. I was recently at the passing out parade of the police in Kent, and I met so many different kinds of people from so many different backgrounds, and they were fantastic. And when I go out with these police in Canterbury on patrol, they're lovely people. But we just need more of them. That's the simple fact. We need more and more money, and to keep police stations open, because they're closing all over the place. Mm-hmm. So the national budget has to change. Yeah.
Rosie Duffield, the Labour candidate for Canterbury, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate you taking part. It has gone quick. The Rosie is the Canterbury's candidate for Canterbury. Louise Harvey-Quirke is the candidate for the Conservative Party. Russ Timpson is representing the Liberal Democrats. Henry Stanton for the Green Party. Bridget Porter for Reform UK, and Luke Buchanan-Hodgman from the SDP. But Rosie Duffield, thank you very much for your time. Good luck with the rest of the campaign.
Thanks so much. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.